And with that, let me introduce our guest, who, as I said, happens to be the inaugural speaker for this new series. Sanya Richards-Ross is a decorated track and field Olympic and world champion, NBC sports analyst, TV star, entrepreneur, wife, and mother. She keeps herself very busy, as you can see. As the kids say, she crushed it in the 400 meters, becoming the first American woman in 28 years and only the second in history to be crowned Olympic champion over 400 meters at the 2012 Games in London. Sanya is, in fact, one of the most decorated female athletes in track and field history with 4 gold medals and 1 bronze. And she remains the fastest American woman to ever run the 400 meter. And I have to share with you, Sanya, when I was talking about you coming to my congregation on a Sunday a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned the fact that when I ran track in high school, I was a distance runner, but they put me in the 4x4 one time. You will be maybe not surprised to learn that I was 20 seconds slower than you were in high school. I ran a 52 in high school, which is unbelievable. And I was well into the 70s, I'm afraid to say. They never put me in that relay again. She was twice the IAAF Athlete of the Year and Track and Field News Athlete of the Decade. She's just built an amazing legacy for herself. Off the track, Sanya keeps very busy as a spokesperson. She's been a spokesperson for brands like Nike. She's written books, one of which we'll talk about today is called Chasing Grace. And I really enjoyed it, Sanya. I've got a lot of questions and reflections that you raised with that book. It was wonderful. She starred in a TV series or multiple TV series, you name it. She's also an advocate for Black moms and a proud mother of 2 boys, Aaron and Asani, with her husband, Aaron Ross, who is himself a 2-time Super Bowl champion. So you know how they talk about power couples? I think we're encountering one half of one right now. Most recently, you may have heard her commentating for NBC during the Olympics. You may also have found yourself working out with her on iFit. I found the iFit that you did with your husband, so that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Sanya is a truly inspiring woman, and we are grateful to have her here with us tonight to share some wisdom about life and faith. Now, as you can imagine, the first question I want to ask Sanya is, what is it like to run the 400 meter?
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I lived in New York for a while when my husband played for the Giants, but it just worked out that I was visiting for an event and the timing worked out so well. So thank you guys so much for having me. The 400 is a very tough race. I always say for me, it kind of mimics life because it challenges you mentally, spiritually, and physically because it's the one race that is a sprint, technically, but you can't sprint the entire way.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out how to balance speed and endurance and your emotions and all of those things to execute the perfect race.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of lessons from the 400. And that's actually what inspired me to write the book. And
Yeah.
I talk a lot about chasing all of these medals and all of these things and eventually being most grateful that I ran into grace.
Yeah.
But I know we'll get into it because we have a lot of conversations, but the 400 was a very, very, very tough race. I always say the 400 chose me. I didn't choose the 400. But once I mastered it, I really loved being able to sprint. And then when I was at my best, like flying down the final 100 meters, coming home and crossing the finish line, especially when I was able to do it successfully at the Olympics, it was certainly a dream come true. So
Yeah.
it was a challenging race, but like anything in life that challenges us, it also brings us great joy, you know, when we're able to do it at our best. So yeah, it was most of the times it was fun.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, no, I think like many people here, watching people like yourself running the 400, and I've watched a bunch of clips of you this last week. I mean, 400 runners have beautiful strides.
Thank you.
You know, it's just a beautiful race to watch. I definitely recommend checking out one of her races. You'll really appreciate it. So one of the things I was really struck by in the Chasing Grace is the opening pages. You talked about how excited you were as a child to run and to drill and to exercise and to be at practice.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the questions I have for you is, how did your parents manage to support that and maybe not overburden you with expectations and things like that? Like help you keep the joy alive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So just to give some context to my story and who I am, I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, where track and field was and still is the most popular sport. And so growing up, I always knew I wanted to be an Olympian. I loved track and field at a very early age. And I just loved everything about it. I loved training. I loved the self-discipline. I loved that it was an individual sport and I could always pour into myself and get better. And so it was a sport I really fell in love with early. And like I said, it taught me so many lessons. What I think my parents did a really good job of as I was kind of maturing through the stages of sport was my dad was actually a really good soccer player in Jamaica. And people always say if he were born in a different generation, he would have been one of the world greats. But, he was born in the 50s, and Jamaica didn't have the infrastructure and support to help him to be great. And so being that he was had the potential to be great, he saw that in me very early on. And I think what he did really well was he never pushed me or forced me. He just literally walked alongside me. And there was a really important moment in our lives when I was 16 years old. I had suffered my first injury. I had been very successful through high school and winning all of my races. And I had a really tough season my junior year because I had pulled my hamstring for the first time and I wasn't competing well. And my dad said to me on our summer ride home, he said to me, "Sanya, do you want to be great?" And I was like, of course I want to be great. Like, why else would I be doing this? And I realized in that moment that he was asking me if I wanted to be great, it takes intentional effort. You're not just going to be great because you have the talent and the skill. To be great, it's going to take an intentional effort from you to be great. And so that season, I remember my senior year, I started doing 1,000 sit-ups every night. I started watching film. I started watching film. I was eating healthy. And what was great was that when my dad asked me that question, now I was leading. And my dad just had done all the research. He was just ready for me and had everything prepared for me to be great. And so I think that was what my dad provided. And my mom was always that soft shoulder to lean on. Like for her, it was always a sport. It was always fun. And so I felt like even though I wanted it so badly and my dad and I were kind of in lockstep on that, my mom was always like, it's okay. Like just have fun. It's not life or death. Like and she was the one who always kept things in perspective for me. And so I would say that the balance and love and support that they both gave me really helped to nurture my passion and love and joy for the sport in the most healthy way I could have imagined that allowed me to go on to have a lot of success in the Olympics.
Yeah, that's great because I know that, a lot of parents, they don't know how much to push, how much to support.
Yeah.
And there are times when, and I'm sure many of you have had this experience where I know I came home at one point and said, "I'm quitting the team." And my parents said, "No, you're not. We paid for this season." And they saw it as, it was about teaching me discipline and sticking with stuff. Yeah. But it's a fine balance.
It is.
You want to make sure that joy stays there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it sounds like your parents did a great job with that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I grew up in Canada. And Canada, of course, it's all about hockey.
Yes.
And one of the things I found just sort of delightful in your book was the description of track and field in Jamaica. Yeah. It reminded me of hockey in Canada.
Yeah.
What is it about the sport? Is it because there have been these Jamaican luminaries in the sport that make it such a national treasure almost?
Yes, I think so. That tiny island has had so much success in track and field, especially in the sprints. And so when you grow up, you hear about these people, the Merlene Ottis, and now, of course, the Usain Bolt, Shelly Fraser Prices. And so you aspire to be that. And I always tell people that I think why track and field and why the country continues to thrive is because the best athletes gravitate towards that sport. You look at American athletes, there's so many other sports that they can play that you don't always find that the best athletes might end up in track and field. But in Jamaica, because of the great history of athletics and all of the wisdom and the coaches and all the everything that has over the years developed there, you find that the best athletes matriculate to the sport. And so I think that's a big part of the success of track and field. And I always tell people I feel like I got the best of both worlds, being born in Jamaica, having the resources, the support, the access, and then coming to the United States when I was 12 years old and going to great high school and a great university where lots of resources and support as well that really helped me to continue to be great. So yeah, I got the best of both worlds when it came to that.
That's awesome. Yeah, she has a wonderful description in her book about being 7 and at a national meet already in Jamaica.
Yes.
And just how tens of thousands of people were there.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that's such what a special experience for
everyone. It was like Friday night football in Texas, where we would be 7 years old and it's like 10,000 people in the stands cheering. And in my prep school, they would like rehearse chants, and so they'd come to the meet, "Mas Prepa Champion," like our school, and it was a whole cultural movement, you know. And so when people ask me like, "Were you nervous like at the Olympics?" Like, I've been running in front of crowds since I was 7, you know.
No, absolutely. No, I thought that was wonderful. I don't
think Sanya's mic is on.
Oh, you know, I think you're right. Oh my gosh, how amateur.
Well, thank you.
And I have been on so many mics.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. I know. Thank God I've won enough, right?
You tell a story about a race, and I know we're kind of talking about Jamaica and your childhood, and I think you'll recognize the race I'm talking about. It was the one where you were sort of thrown off at the start, and then you had to catch up, and it was just 60 meters.
Oh, yes.
You know, how did some of the childhood racing experiences build up your confidence or teach you things, or what did they teach you? What do you think, or maybe a better way of putting this question is, what does sports for children teach them, do you think?
Such a good question. I think sports is one of life's greatest teachers. I think that sports teaches us self-belief, discipline, hard work, resiliency. It teaches you how to be in the midst of failure. It teaches you how to be uncomfortable. I think specifically the 400 and the Olympics, specifically the Olympics, teaches you delayed gratification. That sometimes you're gonna have to work on something for a long time before you're able to reap the benefits of it. It teaches you teamwork, sportsmanship, and it teaches you how to be in community. I mean, I think sports is one of the greatest tools for a young person, especially in today's day and age, when there's so many distractions, there's so many things out there telling us to do this and do that and be this and be that by this time and all those things. And I think sports is a great equalizer. You know, I think sports is one of those things that unites us and brings us together in a way that very few things can. You know, like I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I remember my very first time walking into the Olympic Village for the first time. And so if you can just imagine, you walk into this place, and I always say it feels like a utopia, because there are people from all over the world, all of us with this hope and anticipation of having success. So the hope and the love and everything is just so high, it's like palpable. Obviously, you know, people start to lose and the vibes change. But the very first day, it's like, man, like, why can't the world always feel like this? You know, there's just this love, and there's this, even you go to the cafeteria and there are people there that don't speak your language, yet you're connected on the basis of love of sport, and you just smile and there's a connection. And it's just, it truly was one of the reasons why I kept wanting to go back to the Olympics, was to have that experience over and over again. So I truly feel that sports is a great equalizer and a great teacher. And even if your kid never makes it to college level or the professional level, there's still so much they can learn at the middle school and elementary level that helps to make them a better human being.
Yeah. My dad used to always say that his kids were well-rounded.
Yes.
Because we were, supposed to be good in school. I wasn't always good in school, but also in sports. He felt like that was something that gave us that sort of depth of character. Yeah. No, that's wonderful. You talked a little bit about the move at age 12 to the States, and that's, I don't want to say that was a sacrifice your family made, but your family has been so supportive of you.
Yeah.
How did they handle some of the sacrifices that went into having a child who was so special and who was, sort of bound for the Olympics?
Yeah, my parents always kind of shaped those kind of choices as not sacrifices, but investments in our future. And so that's kind of how I always saw it too. Like everything that I was doing through my life, they weren't sacrifices. They were little investments in this future I wanted for myself. And so when I was 12, my sister was 11. My sister and I are 15 months apart, still my best friend. Um, my mom and dad wanted to move to the United States to give us better opportunities to go to a great university. And I won't say my parents moved solely for me for track and field, because at the time there was no, it wasn't definite that I was going to be an Olympian and all those things.
Right.
It was more, my dad always, his priority was our education. Like, track was not an option if I wasn't doing well in school.
Yeah.
And he used to always tell me, if you can be the best on the track, you can maintain a 4.0 GPA in school. And I did that. and so yeah, my parents, I think, made lots of investments in giving us the best future that they could, which is something that I admire so much. I'll get so emotional about now that I am a mom, because they did make a lot of choices that I felt were so unselfish, because they had a good life in Jamaica. They had a good life. We were upper middle class. My mom had a great job. We lived in a beautiful community, and they left to uncertainty. My mom took a while to find her first job, and it wasn't like we just moved and it was just easy street,
Right.
And now as a mom myself, I know how challenging that is. So they made a lot of choices that I think had such a positive impact on my sister and I. I'm so grateful for that. My mom went on to manage my career. Sorry, I look a little bit easily. Is it possible to get a little tissue?
Somebody grab it.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Because the crying doesn't help. Thank you guys so much. What was I saying?
Just about your parents, sort of the move. And I love this idea that they weren't so much sacrificing as they were investing.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful way to think about it. And that was, that makes sense given what I've read about your parents. That's how they would see it.
Yeah, and they, when I was saying that my mom went on to manage my career, my entire career. My mom actually became a fitness instructor, and she was the first person that helped me. Thank you so much. She was the first person that helped me on get on my training regimen. My dad, full time. My dad, fortunately, was an investor in real estate, so he was able to come with me. My parents moved to Texas with me. It was just countless choices after choices that they made that helped me to be the best in the world. And it was a really fun journey when we were able to go to the Olympics together, experience all that together, and it always felt like our success because of how much we did it all together. So it was very special.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think in reading your book, I'm shifting a little bit forward.
Sure.
When you were at University of Texas, you talk about the coach that you had there and some of the problems with their coaching style.
Yeah.
And I was so interested to think about what it was in your life that helped you because young people, so often we model what we see in coaches or mentors, without really questioning whether it's appropriate. Yeah. But I wonder if just having such a strong basis, foundation from your family helped you to see, oh, wait a second, something's wrong here.
Yeah. So in my book, I write about my time at the University of Texas, where I had a coach who, since my time there was fired for a lot of the issues that they had post my time there. I only stayed at the University of Texas for 2 years before going pro and competing in the Olympics. But her methods and tactics for what she thought would inspire and motivate the team at times were very degrading and very manipulative. And it's like you say, I was young, I was 16, 17 years old, and here she was, this Black woman who I admired. My mom thought, this is a woman that you can model your life off of. There were only 2 Black women that were head coaches at Division I universities. But she just had methods that literally would tear young women down. And after my freshman year, I realized a lot of what she was doing, and it just wasn't sitting well in my spirit. And the thing that I think helped me so much was I would talk to my mom and dad every day. My mom and dad would fly up, and they were always there for me. And there, she would use tactics like, I'm gonna call your mom, and as to scare some of the girls on the team to like say, okay, well, I won't do anything because I'm afraid that you're gonna. And I'd be like, well, I've already talked to my mom.
Yeah.
And I was empowered by the fact that my mom was like, no, like you tell me, I'll also talk to your coach. But I just always knew that they had my back, no matter what, and they gave me the courage to stand up to her.
Yeah.
And it's a very nuanced situation and a very difficult thing to really talk through because we looked at a lot of things happening that the times are just different, right? Where it was just and so I'm so grateful that because of the foundation that my parents had set, a lot of what she didn't rattle me and didn't unnerve me. Because I tell people, a lot of the girls that went to college with me could have gone on to be Olympic champions. But because they didn't have the same support I did, they cracked under the pressure of it all, and it's heartbreaking when I look back on it because I'm like, man, like these women had so much talent, so much promise. And the only thing they were missing, was just that supportive parent that was just there beside them 100% of the way. So, I'm very grateful for that. And it was a tough time.
Yeah, and what would you say to a young person?
Yeah.
Because mentors are so important and coaches are so important.
Yeah.
What would you say to a young person about how to find the right ones?
Yes.
What should they be looking for? I guess that's what I'm asking.
It's a really good question, and we don't talk about it enough. So young people don't know what to look for and how to get out of situations like that. So I'm grateful for that question. I think whenever you're around people and they want to do stuff in secrecy, that's always a bad sign. Like anything that a mentor or someone is doing with you should be something that should be public. You should be able to talk to other people about it. You should be able to talk to your parents about it. It shouldn't feel uncomfortable. And it's okay if that person, and if it doesn't work out. A lot of times people feel like like I'm a failure if I don't make this relationship work or if I don't make this situation work. But not every coach and not every mentor, not every sports psychologist, not every teacher is for you. And that's okay to advocate for yourself and to say, hey, whoever that other person is that you trust, whether it is a parent or a grandparent or an aunt, I don't feel comfortable in this classroom. There's something about the energy with this person that feels off. Is that okay? Can I, and so I think whenever there's stuff in secrecy, whenever something doesn't feel good to you and your spirit, because we all know, we kind of have an inner voice that tells us and we quiet it because we feel like, no, I'm supposed to be, that everyone else is okay. Right. No one's saying anything. Right. I don't want to buck the powers that be, but I think that the times have changed. I think kids are more likely to speak up now than ever and advocate for themselves more than ever. But I would say the main thing is nothing should be a secret for the people you love.
Yeah.
So if you're in a situation that the person wants to keep, I should be able to talk to my mom and dad about this or whoever I love about this comfortably. Yeah. And I think that that's sometimes where people get caught up in situations where you're like, I didn't know that was happening to you. Yeah. It's like they reveal it years later. You're like, why did you not feel comfortable sharing? Oh, the person told me not to speak. And it's like, no, that's always, to me, one of the biggest keys.
Oh, I think that's great advice. Yeah. I really do. Well, let's go from sort of a coach that wasn't so great to a coach that was very good.
Amazing.
And I've forgotten his name now, but you dedicated.
Coach Clyde Hart.
There we go.
Coach
okay.
Clyde Hart.
Tell us a little bit about what it was about him as a coach that was so important for you.
Yeah, it was night and day. So I went from this young Black woman who I thought was going to, look like me and treat me the way I deserve to be treated, to this older white man who literally treated me like his daughter. And it was just amazing. He was Michael Johnson's coach. He also coached Jeremy Warner to Olympic gold. And there was this calm about him. He was a Christian man, which was always very important. I learned after, I was like, anybody who is going to pour into me, God needs to pour into them first. So it was important to me that the people who I had around me had Christian values. He always put God first. And from the very first time he saw me, he said, you're going to be Olympic champion. And, we just had the greatest relationship. And it was always so much more than just the track for us. It was a love and a relationship. And he treated me like his daughter. And I think that was the biggest difference, was just the pureness of his intention, and just his desire to want to help me fulfill my goals. And together we were a really dynamic duo.
Yeah, that's wonderful. My brother is a college coach, and I often think that what it is about him that brings out the best in his athletes is that he's pure of heart.
Yes.
You know, like in the Beatitudes,
yes.
Pure of heart. He's got that purity, and I think that's so important in coaches. They really got to be about you and not just building a program through you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I know that you sang in the choir when you were in high school. We're kind of going back in time now. And I thought that was so interesting. Because you were excelling in this individual sport, but yet taking time out to sing in the choir. And tell me a little bit about your church experience growing up.
Yes. So when we migrated to the States when I was 12 years old, at the time my grandmother was an avid churchgoer. And I would go to the church on and off with my grandmother, but it wasn't consistent. And so we migrated to the States and we moved to South Florida, where my mom's eldest sister was always in the church. And so she was the first one to bring us to church, and I just fell in love with Christ, with the community. And I was baptized and gave my life to Christ when I was 11 years old, not 11, when I was 12 years old. We were married when I was 12. And I just always knew from that moment on that there was a larger calling on my life, and that all of the gifts that I had received had come from God. And it was my job to do my best with it, to make the best use of it, so that would be my glory back to Him. And one of the gifts He gave me was I actually had a really good voice. Well, decent. I always said if I wasn't a track athlete, I might have been Yolanda Adams, but and so that was my ministry. I used to love to be in church. We have choir practice every Thursday. My aunt was actually the choir director, and so people always thought she made me sing solo because I was her niece, but it was because my voice was spectacular. But that was just kind of my entry into the church, and it was actually, my aunt was actually the entry for all of us. My mom became an avid churchgoer, my sister, all of us kind of, through my aunt, really, found our place in the church. But yeah, I just always tried to use all of my gifts to the best of my ability. And for as long as I could, I was in the choir until obviously when my training got really serious and I was traveling a lot and really focused on competition. I wasn't in the choir anymore, and now that I haven't used the skill, I've lost it. But when I was younger, I used to really enjoy singing, and I had a really good voice. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, this kind of brings me to the question of faith and what aspects of faith. Everybody has their things that they gravitate towards, ideas of God, and sometimes they're destructive, sometimes they're not helpful.
Right.
What are some of the ideas about God and about faith that you feel have really supported you through the years?
Yes.
And who is God to you, I guess, in some ways, what I'm asking.
Yes. And I do want to apologize. I do have a little, my son got me a little sick about 3 days ago, and I didn't want to cancel, so forgive me for being a little bit stuffy and stuff, but it's not COVID. I checked. But forgive me. God is everything to me. And what I have learned throughout my life and through my travels, because I've gotten to meet so many amazing people, is that God is the same. He's the same no matter where you go, to everyone that loves Him. And what God means to me is that He's always there. So I guess if I could share one of the stories of one of the toughest journeys in my life and where I felt like I met God. I was at the Olympics in 2008. I had trained. I had won every single race that season. I was favored to win gold, and in Beijing, it didn't happen. It wasn't meant to be. It was the only race I lost all year. I won 20 races and lost one. Racing against the same people. And I won the bronze. It took me a long time to say I won the bronze. For so long I said I lost the gold. And the crushing thing about crossing the finish line at the Olympic Games is that you have to wait 4 long years to have the opportunity to do it again. It's not like the NBA Finals, you can't do it again next year. It's not like the NFL. 4 years. I was at my second Olympics, and most athletes only make one. So I was going to have to make my third Olympics to possibly win an individual Olympic gold. I had won 3 medals. I won 2 relay medals, and I won the bronze. But I hadn't fulfilled this mission that I believe that God had placed in my heart. I believe that when I said I wanted to be an Olympic champion, that was God gave me that gift. God gave me that dream. And I was devastated. I thought the world was going to end. I didn't think the sun was going to come up the next day. And what I learned through that moment is that God is faithful. God is true. And 4 years later, after going through so much, building myself up, having the self-belief, and trusting that that vision had come from God, He allowed me to run into my fairy tale ending in London. And what it taught me is that God is faithful to us. Like, His delay is not a denial. The things that He places in our heart that are for us, that are our gifts, He will see them through to fruition. And so it's just in every aspect of my life, when I feel like there's something that God is pushing me to do or inspiring me to do, even if it doesn't happen on my timing, I still trust and believe that He's faithful to His promises, that He will show up for us. And that looks differently for everybody. You know, I feel like God illuminated that to me through my Olympic success, but I think He illuminates that to us through other ways. Like, if all of us look at our lives and think about the things that we yearn for and desire that truly come from God, eventually He does see them through to fruition. And so God is just my faithful rock. He's there when I'm at my lowest, and He's there when I'm at my highest. And I always give Him the glory for everything in between. And yeah, He's just exactly who He says He is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You know, and I think there's a line that you mentioned in the book where you talk about, and now I'm kind of shifting to, I was really interested in your discussion about Marion Jones and the sort of decisions that she made to essentially to cheat, to use substances that were, prohibited, to run faster, to be better. And one of the things you talk about is accepting that the journey is ups and downs, and that you're not trying to sort of shoot like a star into the heavens, but really accept the journey has those peaks and valleys. And I think that and wanting to model that for younger people, I think is so important. Because I think, when you're young and you fail, you feel like, you'll never recover.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something I really admire about you, that you try to let life's rhythms be authentic.
Yes. It was always my desire to compete with integrity. And I remember how crushed I was. I don't know how much of you follow track and field and are familiar with Marion Jones and her story, but Marion Jones was all world to us when we were competing. I wanted to be just like Marion Jones. She competed in 5 events at the Olympics, so I did 5 events in high school. And I just always thought the world of her. And I would defend her at tracks when people would say, oh, she's cheating. I'm like, there's no way. She was talented in high school, why would she need to cheat? And so when the news broke that she finally admitted that she had taken performance-enhancing steroids, I was devastated. Because this person who I believed could have done it without steroids still fell victim to something that I felt like she could have had the resilience to fight against. She had the talent. She could have been the best. Even if she didn't win every race, her talent was enough. And although I have long forgiven Marion Jones because people make mistakes, what it made me have a resolve about was, if I am that person to another young person, I never want to disappoint them in that way. I never want for them to look at my career and say, I think that's possible, and now I'm not sure if it is because she cheated. And although I had my ups and downs and my failures, because I didn't have the steroids to bolster me physically and mentally, I do think it is the true picture of what success looks like. Failure is a necessary ingredient in the recipe for success. Every person is going to experience failure in life. And so it is an unfortunate view when people think that success is all up. Because when they bump their toe or they falter, they think, oh, I'm never going to be successful. And the most successful people in life here know the most. They fail the most. And so, I'm one of those people. People will say all the time, well, successful people, oh, I'm not a role model. I don't want to be a role model. And I'm like, I think it's an honor and a privilege to be a role model. And I accept it as such. The fact that what I've done has been on the world stage, I accept that young people will see it. And I'm not perfect at all. I have made my fair share of mistakes. However, I've really done my best at trying to compete with integrity, to inspire the next generation that they can do the same.
No, absolutely. She's like answering all my questions. I want to talk a little bit about the book and Chasing Grace and what inspired you to write it. I mean, one of the questions that I had, one of the things that struck me is the writing process is such great introspection. Like it really trains us to be introspective. What did you discover about yourself in the process of writing that book that may have surprised you or?
Yes. So I retired in 2016, unfortunately, after having 3 surgeries on my big toe. So when I won in London, I effectively won the Olympic gold medal on a broken right toe. I had a condition called hallux rigidus, which is like severe arthritis in the joint. And so after so many years of running, I had worn down all the cartilage and was literally having bone on bone while I was competing. And the doctor who I'd been going to for many years had said, well, just do a simple surgery, shave it down, and you'll have more space and you'll run with more comfort. Well, I'm happy I didn't listen before 2012, because after 2012, the surgery was so bad that the pain in my toe, it was unbearable. It had gotten, so I kept having progressive surgeries until I decided my quality of life is more important than chasing medals and all of these things. And so I retired in 2016 and decided I would write my book at that point because I was closing a very important chapter of my life. I started running when I was 7 and competed up until I was 30, 31. And I had learned so much, I had experienced so much, and I didn't want to forget it. One of the great things was I kept a journal throughout my career. Every year I write my journal. And it was so amazing to go back and read what 17-year-old Sanya would think and a track meet and 20-year-old Sanya would think, and to put that all into writing. But I learned a few things about myself. One, I always take on too much. When the publisher asked me to do the book, I was like, well, I want to do a teen book, and she's like, well, why don't you just write 3 books? And I was like, sure, 3 books, like same as one, right? So I wrote 3 books, all on the same deadline, which was crazy. I would never do that again. Don't advise to do that. But I also had an opportunity, which I think as an athlete you rarely do because you're always so focused on what's next. You rarely go back and say, wow, I did that and I did that. But man, to sit with my thoughts and the memories of breaking the American record and, my family traveling to some of the most Italy and Paris and Berlin and Athens, Greece, and just all the things that I had seen. It was truly beautiful. And I think that we all should do that, whether you publish it or not. Taking a moment to just go back and reflect on your life and, share it and even pass it on to your children, because our stories help people in our own families so much. And sometimes we take for granted, like, oh, no one cares, or that wasn't important, and it really is. So it was truly a beautiful time, and for me, I wanted to draw the parallels of what the 400, the toughest race on the track, taught me about God and life, and I was able to really chart that through my life and share it in the book.
And that actually, I probably should have mentioned, or I probably should have asked this question back when you were describing the 400. But that is really interesting how you structure the book. Based on Coach Hart's sort of strategy for you, the 4 Ps. What is your favorite P of the, what's your favorite 100-yard or 100-meter part of the, yeah.
So Coach Hart had a very interesting strategy for the 400, and I think it's a great strategy for life. So we always would call it the 4 Ps. So it was push, pace, position, poise, and then there was a silent P that was ever present, pray. And it was a great strategy for the 400, and as I lived with it and moved with it and then retired, I realized this is a strategy for life. And so the first P would be push, where for the first 50 meters of the 400, because the 400 is a full lap of the track, you would push with everything that you have. And I equate that to anything in life. So, I see there's like a young person here, so I'm gonna do this one for you. So anything in life, you're starting something new, you want to push out the blocks, right? You want to give it everything you have. You have all this enthusiasm and excitement about the project, and you're putting in all the work, and you're doing all the research, and you find all the right people. And that's the first part of the 400. Get out like it's not a 400, get out like it's 100 meters as fast as you can. And then you got to pace yourself. Because the reality is, you cannot keep up that push pace on anything forever. You'll burn out, right? In anything that you do, whether it's theology, like there comes a point where you have to figure out what's your pace. At what level are you going to learn? What works for you that you can continue to sustain this? And that's the same thing in life. You got to now find your rhythm. Like, how can I'm on this new journey, I'm off to college, I figured out my major. Okay, now I got to take this many classes, and I need this much rest, and I got to eat this much food, and you pace yourself. And then the third P, which actually might be my favorite P, in life and on the track, is you got to position yourself for success, right? So in the race up to 200 meters, I don't look at where my competition is. I'm running my race, right? I am trying to get to the 200-meter mark in 23.5 seconds. So I can't look around because I might get off my pace. But at 200, now I got to look around and see where I am. Am I positioned to win the race, right? Like, have I covered enough of these athletes to be able to win? And it's the same thing in life. There comes a moment in your life where you got to figure out, am I positioned for success? Am I around people that pour into me? Is this college serving me? Are my friend groups serving me? Like, are the things around me serving me to be great? And then the final 100 of the race is where you stay poised, because you've already done all the work. And the worst thing you could do is to try now to start working too hard, because the body is already breaking down. So you got to just stay poised and believe everything that you've done will pay off. The same thing in life. By this time, you've done the work, you've gotten your rhythm, you positioned yourself for success, and now it's time to take the test. Now it's time to have the meeting. And this is where you just got to be poised. You got to be relaxed, because you are ready. You just got to step out and execute. And throughout it all, you stay prayerful and connected to God, and you win gold. Easy peasy.
Yeah. No, I loved the sort of description of the strategy and taking it 100 by 100.
Yeah.
And it made me think about the fact, and also with your book itself, you definitely have an analytical streak, and I think really great athletes have to have that, because you're constantly breaking things down into smaller steps.
Yeah.
Like, there's a great quote that you have in your book. It's something like, the narrower the focus, the better.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very powerful. In parenting, we're gonna segue to parenting now. How do you think some of these skills, some of these things you've learned, your analytical qualities, your introspection, all that, feed into being a good parent?
So my whole life, I spent training for the hardest event on the track, and nothing prepared me for motherhood. Motherhood, and although it's the most amazing and most beautiful and most rewarding job you'll ever have, it can also be the most challenging, because in every area you're making choices for this little human being that you're praying will serve them, whether it's in the moment or in the future. And because I'm so analytical, I'm always overthinking it. Like, okay, should I do food now, or is it too early? Should I do this, or should. And especially as a working mom, someone who travels a lot, I'm always dealing with a little bit of mommy guilt, right? Because it's like, I want to be with my babies, but I also love being out in the world, and I love sharing all of the things that I've learned and poured into other people. And so I would say, ultimately, of course, sports has certainly helped me to be the best mom that I could be. Because in the same vein, I know on the grandest scale ever, this is where you pour, you water, you plant, and then you pray. You pray that everything that you pour into them will show up and that they'll have the confidence to face the world, that they'll go out and they'll live in their purpose, that they'll stay close to God, all of those things. So it's the ultimate challenge, but I love it. I wouldn't trade anything. I have two sons. Aaron, my son, he is 7, and Asani, my youngest, is 9 months old. He turned 9 months old a few days ago. So, yeah, a new mommy again.
Well, that makes me sort of wonder or ask the question, they're young right now, although Aaron is getting to the point where he may have questions about sort of your legacy, things you've done. How do you think you're going to talk with them about your career and about, because it's interesting. I think about sometimes kids can feel so much pressure to live up to their parents. How are you going to kind of sort of negotiate that with them, do you think?
Yep, exactly like my parents did. They set a perfect example for us. It's a little tougher. Their parents are 4-time Olympic gold medalists, 2-time Super Bowl champs. So already getting letters from the University of Texas for them. But but we've already started that. We've already started laying the foundation that the only thing that we require of him is to always give his best. That's it. Just always give your best. Like right now he does soccer. I don't really want him to play football. But he likes it already because he knows his dad played. But our one requirement is just give your best. Just don't give up. Give your best. And it's funny because he already is like, he has more confidence than both of us combined. He thinks he can beat his mom. He thinks he's Sonic. Like he's just and so I just try to nurture those things and just but I really my parents did lay a really great roadmap for us. And my hope is that I can always walk alongside him, encourage him, and whatever it is that he wants to do, I just want for Ross and I, my husband and I, to always just be able to show up for them, provide the resources that they need to go for it, keep them grounded and humble. And, hopefully they'll be the best little Rosses that they can be, but that's all you can hope for.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. You kind of intimated this a little bit, but how do you find balance in your life? Are you still doing the 1,000 crunches a day?
No.
Okay.
I gave that up right away after retirement. So, I think balance is a very tricky thing. I don't think we ever truly achieve balance. I think what I try to do is prioritize. Mm-hmm. And so I have my priorities. So God and faith is number one in our household, family, and then everything else kind of falls below that. And so what I like to do is, as long as I feel like my family, like we're, filled up spiritually, as long as I feel like we are spending time and everything is great, then I check other boxes. And what I always tell myself is, whatever I'm doing, I want to show up 100% present for that. So if I'm working, I'm 100% present, giving everything that I have. When I'm momming, I'm away from my phones, I'm away from all the distractions, and I'm being the best mom that I can be. And I think that keeps me feeling like in some sort of balance, because I'm doing the best that I can, like all the time. Like, that's always my commitment to myself. Just do the best at what you're doing. And, I can't be the best mom right now because I'm here with you guys. But I certainly hope that I'm giving you guys the best that I have tonight. Yeah. And then when I get home, I'm on a 6 o'clock flight in the morning. And when I get home, I'm going to show up for my kids. I'm going to be the best mom that I can be to them. Yeah. And I think for me, it's about whenever I feel like, I think the balance check for me is whenever I feel like, am I working too much? I check in with my family. Like, dudes, how are you feeling? Do you need mommy for anything? And no, mom, we're good. You're the best mom ever. and I tell them, I'm like, dude, if you need me, you can always be honest. I'll do it. So we have a really good relationship where I'm very honest and open with them. My husband, I check in with him constantly to make sure that he's feeling loved and supported. And and that's kind of how we operate. But I think for me, it's not about balance as much as just prioritizing and then checking those boxes.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense. I know we're getting kind of close to the end, but what I want to talk to you about is your final race.
Yeah.
So in the last chapter of Chasing Grace, what she does is she goes back and forth between the Olympic gold at the 2012 Olympics and then her final race again at Hayward Field, which is the Prefontaine Classic for people who know about track. That's a big, big meet out in Eugene, Oregon. And it's really a lovely story, that last race. Why don't you tell it?
Yeah, thank you. So I briefly gave you guys some insight into how my career was kind of ending. So I had my third surgery. Okay, so after my first surgery, I wasn't able to compete at all. Came back from my second surgery, was running really well again, was #1 in the world, and had the most bizarre mishap. I'm on a flight, I'm laying down, and this person steps over me and literally breaks my toe while I was sleeping. I wake up screaming. I had a mask on my face, so I never even saw the person. It was the most bizarre mishap ever. So I ended up having to have my third surgery. After, I think on my second surgery, I could have potentially won an Olympic gold medal, but after my third one, my toe was just like, it just couldn't take the torque and pressure. And so I ended up pulling my hamstring right before the Olympic trials. And so I remember thinking to myself, I can, like every athlete does, I can still do it. I can get back. All I have to do is finish top 3 and I can still make this team. So I go to the Olympic trials and I'm in my final race. And the best part of this was that social media had just started to kind of come around. So I had told many of my fans this was going to be my final season no matter what. So I was kind of on a farewell tour of the track circuit. And so I'm on the track. I get a poor lane draw. I'm in lane 2, which is a tough lane with my injury. And so I start the race. I get to the 200-meter mark, and I just can't. My body won't go. And it's the first time in my entire career, 20-plus year career, I had ever stopped in the middle of a race. And so I remember hanging my head down because I was so disappointed. The race is ending, so I know there's no chance of me making this team. And the tears start to stream down my face. I'm gonna get emotional thinking about it. And everyone in Hayward Field gets on their feet and they start to applaud me. And I still get emotional thinking about it. And it was such a beautiful moment for me because it was like this appreciation of my entire career and a reminder that I wasn't going to be defined by one race, that I was going to be defined by the breadth of my career. And in front of a crowd who had truly followed my journey, because if you are familiar with track and field, Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon is kind of the track capital of the world, and that's where people really keep up with track and field. So these were my people, and so they just made me feel so loved in that moment. I remember after they started doing that, I picked my head up and I just started to kind of jog around the track and waving to everyone, people coming down from the stands wanting to give me hugs, and it was just really special. And I want to just add one more. What's your name? Kayla? Okay, and I'm going to add this for you too, Kayla. So at the end of all that, my now colleague, Lewis Johnson, comes up to me and he says to me, Sanya, because I knew my career was over, I had announced it, you've done such great things on the track. Like, what do you have planned next? Like, what can we see you dominate next? And Kayla, because I knew I was going to be retiring that year, I was very intentional about my retirement. And I said this prayer all year. Every year I said, God, thank you for this gift. Thank you for this gift that you have given me. I ask God that you leave all the good stuff with me. I'm going to be returning the gift back to you. I said that prayer for a whole year, preparing myself for retirement. And I prepared myself, I was like, okay, when I retire, I'm going to do this, this, and this, because I started to see myself as more than just an athlete. So, I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm a mess up here. Okay, I'm going to get it together. It's going to be worth it, I promise. So, Kayla, I had prepared myself for a whole year. I started to see myself as more than an athlete. I knew what I wanted to do. So when Lewis Johnson put the mic in my face and he said, what will you do next? I said, I want to become a mom. I want to start commentating, and I want to write a book. The very next day, NBC called me and said, are you serious? Do you want to start commentating? 2 days later, I'm in the booth commentating, and I go to Rio as a commentator instead of an athlete. And so I just say that's the power of the tongue, right? You believe in yourself, you say things out loud, and great things happen. And so I went on to be a mom the next year, wrote my book, and started commentating. I'm now commentating in 3 Olympic Games. So I competed in 3 and commentated in 3.
That's great. That's great. Well, I wanted to keep her talking for about an hour, and then we have about maybe a half hour where she can sort of visit with people.
Sure. I know I'm a little sicky sick, so I don't want to get too close. I apologize.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to cancel because I knew it was important. So I wanted to be here. So forgive me. Usually I'm a big hugger and all that, but I want to keep you guys all safe. I don't feel like I'm major contagious, but I feel even more tonight. But maybe it's an opportunity for like a Q&A or something.
I was gonna say, do people have questions that they might like to ask?
Yeah. Start over here.
What is your favorite female track athlete other than you've done great things?
Thank you.
I've watched all the races she was born, right?
Yeah.
Who's your favorite all time?
My favorite all-time athlete, female athlete, track and field. Jackie Joyner-Kersee. Jackie Joyner-Kersee. And it was not just for what she did on the track, but she was just a beautiful human being. She gave back so much to her community. She's still a great ambassador for the sport. And, I think the greatest part of my journey was when her and I became friendly and she would write me after competitions. I can phone her and text her now. And so I would say that she was probably, Merlene Ottey was my first hero because she was a Jamaican superstar. And then my second hero was Jackie Joyner-Kersee. But Jackie Joyner-Kersee, for me, kind of became the one because of all that she also did off the track that I truly admire. And I think that's important. I think that God gives us a platform to use that to help other people. And so that's what makes her number one in my eyes because of what she did on and off the track.
Also has a great book.
Yeah.
Tom.
So at what point in your life did you get married and what impact did your husband have on your career and support and being that he was also a successful athlete?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. So my husband and I met freshman year in college, and we were inseparable. And we dated for 7 years before. So we were engaged after 5 years. If we're up to me, we would have been engaged sooner. But I was like, come on now. But we were both really young. I mean, I met him when I was 18. So I got married actually on my 25th birthday. So I call it my birth anniversary. So this year, February, I'll actually be turning 40 and I would be married for 15 years. We got married in, kind of had to base on the seasons because he was competing, I was competing. I always tell people I couldn't imagine being married to a non-athlete because I was so intense as an athlete. I don't think most people would understand me doing 1,000 sit-ups every night, going to bed at 8 o'clock. It's like, but my husband will tell you that, my husband will tell you that, and he will say it too, that my family and the way that I was structured made him a better athlete. So my husband started playing football when he was in high school, never played young when he was younger, and never really had a discipline or structure. No one in his family really played sports. And so it was truly when he met me and I had this routine and stuff, and he was like, wow, like this, I could take this to a whole nother level. He started eating better, started doing sit-ups and all that kind of stuff. And so we just, I'm so grateful because we really grew up together. We were there for the highs of highs, the lowest of lows. And he is just an incredible human being. Like, he's just the nicest guy and an amazing husband, a great dad. My sons are so lucky to have him. And so, yeah, it's been his support over the years, even now beyond, like, I'm only here because he's willing to be with the boys, He got a 9-month-old and he's on daddy duty. But yeah, he's such an important part of my journey even still. And I feel very blessed that we met when we were kids and really got to grow up together and support each other in the way that we did.
Does your husband share the same faith as you?
Yes. Yeah, so we're both Christian. And my husband actually was really raised in the church. Like, he wasn't like me. His grandmother and mom, and they all would go to church very early on. So it's a funny story. I think I might have wrote about it in my book. First date was dinner, second date was church. And that's when I knew to be my husband. I was like, this is so cool. Like, we're in church. Second date, can you imagine? we went to a really vibrant church in Austin, Texas, that I still love, Greater Mount Zion. And man, we lived in Austin for 14 years. So I went to that church for 14 years, and that pastor married us. He still plays a huge part in my life, and yeah, I don't think it could work without that, because my faith was always so important to me. His faith has always been extremely important to him, and it's, both of our families. Like everything that we do is based in our faith. So yes.
Greg.
What kind of training do you do now, and will that toe allow you to run for pleasure?
So for a very long time, I had a love-hate relationship with running after retiring, because for so long running had brought me so much joy, and towards the end of my career it had brought me so much pain that I had to overcome every day when I was running. And so it took me a long time to because I would still lift weights and I would bike and do all those things, but I just couldn't get myself to go for runs. But now, yes, I can. I obviously, and it's so funny because I was like, man, maybe I had just taken some time off. The toe would have been okay. Maybe I didn't need to have surgery. I could have just maybe taken a year off, because although my toe would never be the same after the 3 surgeries, I do think that it was also an injury of repetition. I think had I taken, so yes, now I can run without too much pain, and I love running again. I don't like to run for long distances still, but I will get a good workout on the treadmill and all that. And I just had a baby 9 months ago, so I'm just kind of getting back in the swing of things. I have a gym at home, so my husband and I work out together, and it's also important for us because we want our sons to see us having an active, healthy lifestyle, because the earlier they work out and it's a part of their routines, the healthier they're going to be. So although I'm not as enthusiastic about working out as I used to be, they're my inspiration.
Very good. Very good. John.
Yeah, what do you think of the state of affairs of being an athlete today with social media and such, and the scrutiny and everything?
Yeah.
Where sometimes it's more off the field that they care about. It's a lot of times I don't really care what people do off the field.
Yeah.
It's their own personal life. So
Yeah.
what do you think that it's like being an athlete today?
Yeah. I oftentimes wonder if I could have survived in today's atmosphere as an athlete, because it is just so hard. We didn't have the immediate feedback when we had failures, or when, simple, your hair doesn't look good, silly things that cause the biggest stir on social media. Sometimes I wonder how they do it, because people can be so cruel on social media. You find that the people who are the nastiest, that have they're the ones that talk. It's not the people like us who would say the nice things, because we just, it's you wouldn't take the time to sit there and ridicule somebody. But the people who are the meanest people are the ones that are always writing, and so what I am most grateful for is athletes like Simone Biles, who in Tokyo took a stand for her mental health, right? She said, okay, look, I'm overwhelmed. And I think it brought into the conversation something that never happened when I was an athlete. There was never any talk about mental stability and mental well-being. You just push through and you just run. It was all physical. But now people realize and understand how important mental health is. And I think because of those conversations, I feel like there's more resources and infrastructure on every level. College level, there's sports psychologists on teams. Absolutely on the professional level. At the Olympics, they have them on the Team USA, they're in the village, they're everywhere for the athletes to tap into that, because we all see how tough it can be to be a professional athlete in today's day and age, because people are just unrelenting, So I'm grateful I didn't have to deal with that. And I just hope that the athletes of today are able to find that balance of, yes, your personality. Yes, they have to sometimes do those things. They need to be on social media to show them, to be a brand and to get endorsements. But I hope that they're able to have enough, shield around them and protection, so that it doesn't have an impact on them mentally, because it can be very draining, very draining.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of that, how did you run that long race with a broken toe?
Yeah. Yeah, so I ended up working with a fantastic sports psychologist throughout my career. I started working with him in 2009 after my '08 disappointment, and he really helped me to have the tools to be able to push through mentally, whether it was through physical injury or whether it was, disappointments, whatever it was. He gave me a lot of tools in my toolkit that helped me. And it also was a lot of grit, right? Like it was painful. I would take my toe up. I would, I wasn't big on like taking medicine. So I wasn't someone who would like take aspirins and all that because we were responsible for what we put in our bodies. No one cared if you got it off the counter and it showed up contaminated, that was on us. So I was very careful about taking any kind of medicine. So it's a lot of just grit and desire to be great, as well as, leaning on a lot of the tools that my sports psychologist gave me to be able to focus on my goals and it was ahead of me and not so much on what I was feeling. I mean, you kind of had to do that in workouts too, because the 400 training was grueling, So you had to really learn how to push through a lot of things. But yeah, it was challenging. But I think a lot of times it was just my mental toughness. Like, I want to win gold, and this is what it's gonna take. Yes, Kayla, I've been waiting for you. I'm sorry, I need some more tissue. I've run through all the tissue. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good one. Yes. What's my tip for balancing schoolwork, all the extracurricular activity stuff? So what I found was that the busier I was the more stuff I got done. I felt like the more time I had, the more I would procrastinate. And so I had to learn, because I think I told you guys, my Jamaican daddy did not play with me. I had to maintain a 4.0, and I maintained a 4.8 GPA all through high school. 3.5 in college, but but yeah, and so what it taught me was that if I wanted to do all of those things, I had to prioritize. I had to get my work done to be able to compete at a high level. So I felt like the busier I was, it kind of forced me to make a schedule. So I got really good, Kayla, about making a schedule, right? So it was like I would come home, and are you in high school or college? High school, yeah. I would come home from school, and it was like from this time to this time, homework. This time to this time, core work. This time to this time, eat, rest. And I know sometimes it can feel like, but what you learn in life is the more regimented you can make things, the more things can feel like they are structured, is the more peace and tranquility you have in your life, And so I know it's kind of now, but it will pay off in the future. And you came here tonight to listen to me. So I love that. That means you are committed to being great. But yeah, it was like the night of my state final was my prom. And I went to prom for like 10 minutes. And I was fine with that because I won 4 gold medals and state. But, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so the fact that you're doing all of those things means that you must have great gifts and talents. And so see it as a blessing that you're able to do all of those things. Try to bring your best self to all of it. And schedule, okay? And just make the most of your time, like don't, you got a lot going on, so you got to get it done, and that's just how you want to look at it. And it's a privilege. It's an honor that you get to do those things, because if you weren't good at it, they couldn't do it. So, yeah. See, always try to make it a positive.
Jan.
Jesus. Non-stop.
Jan.
So obviously you were graced with this wonderful gift. At what point did you become competitive? Was this something that you felt at 2 years old? 5 years old?
Right.
I was competitive from like the day she took the first step.
Oh yeah.
Like, walk out. So I'm just curious if you kind of had that same response.
Yeah, I was always a super competitive kid. And when I was 9 years old, I wrote for my class assignment that I was going to be an Olympic champion, if that tells you anything about me. And so I would say that although, and I don't take this lightly, and I know that's your mom beside you, right? That's your mom. So one of the things, so at 9, I said I was going to be an Olympic champion. I think largely in part because being from Jamaica, we had Olympic champions. I thought it was possible. I don't know if I truly believed it at that age. But one of the things my dad used to always do is he always would say, you're going to be an Olympic champion. You're going to be a world beater. You're going to be the best in the world. And I always tell people, I felt like he told me enough until I believed him. He made me believe it. And when I was 16 years old, after that year I told you guys about when I was 15 and I had this season-ending injury and my dad challenged me to be great and I committed to doing 1,000 sit-ups and all of those things. That one year, I broke the high school national record at 400 meters that still stands today. That was in 2002, so that's 22 years later, that record still stands. I broke the indoor records and all of those things, and I realized immediately how my hard work paid off. I knew I could be an Olympic champion. So what I would say at 16, I knew I could be an Olympic champion, and prior to that, it was just kind of this thought and this idea, but at 16, I really believed it was possible.
Yeah. Margaret.
Do you ever get a chance to go back to your roots in Kingston, Jamaica?
Oh my goodness, I'm in Jamaica 3-4 times a year. I go back to Jamaica often, and I gotta tell you guys another funny story. So, and I'm surprised that you guys probably thought about this, but okay, imagine, I'm born in Jamaica, competed in Jamaica till I was 12, but I run for the US. Do you see an issue there? So, when I was 16 years old, the phenomenal year I had, I was invited by the youth US team coach to join the national team. And so by this time, I was living in the States for 4 years. Of course, that's a lifetime to a kid. All of my friends were in America where I was living. And so when she invites me, I run up to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I want to be on the national team. And she's like, you don't have a passport. And I was like, what? She's like, you're not an American citizen. I was like, well, I need to be one. Like, make it happen. And so my mom goes through it, because at the time, of course, I'm a minor. So if she becomes a citizen, I become a citizen, a naturalized citizen. And so it was a very whimsical kind of decision for me. It was more like, oh my gosh, all my friends are here. I feel like I'm American now. I've been here for 4 years. And so my mom goes through this whole process. I become an American citizen. I make the team to run for Team USA. And my first national team where we go to compete for the World Juniors is where? In Kingston, Jamaica. The one and only time it's ever been there. And I gotta tell you, that experience shaped who I would become. Because, and I had to, for a very long time, it was actually kind of a hard experience on me because the Jamaican fans booed me. They were so upset that I was competing for Team USA. And I had to channel that years later to understand that that was a language of love. Like, they did that because they loved me so much and wanted me to be in Jamaican colors that they expressed it in that way. But it was really hard as a 16-year-old who was the captain of the American team, who they wanted to be the flag bearer. I said, there's no way I can do that in Jamaica. They would kill me. But it was a really good learning experience for me. But when you asked me that question about going back to Jamaica, the reason I thought of that is because I feel like life always has these full circle moments, right? So I'm 16 years old or 17 years old. I go back to Jamaica, have this tough experience by the fans booing me. I didn't run my best because I was so mentally thrown off by all of it all. And as I'm progressing through my professional career, I always knew I wanted to give back. As soon as I start making some money, I want to give back. And so one of the things that I always loved the most about my Jamaican experience was the education I received. I went to the best private school. When I got to America, I was supposed to be held back to go to 7th grade because we start school a year earlier than Americans do. And my mom said, my kids can move their test, give them the test. And we tested out. So we were able to move up and go on to the 8th grade as opposed to going back. And so as I was competing, illiteracy was rising in Jamaica. And that broke my heart because I thought, hey, the one thing that I'll always cherish is the education I received. So I started raising money to start a program in Jamaica called the Sanya Fast Track Program, where we help kids learn to read on their grade level. So the first year, small program, had about 10 kids in the program. Then people started to hear about it, started to help me. The next year, about 70 kids. Well, about 3 years later, USAID, which is an organization that donates to other organizations that put their own money in it. If it's founded by an American and you put their own money in, they will match how much money you put in or more. They gave me $300,000 to help kids. We help almost 7,000 children, or I forget the number now, it's been so many years ago. And I thought, what a full circle moment, right? Like here I was this Jamaican kid who loved Jamaica, competed for the US because I love the US. And then I was able to do something incredible for the people in Jamaica. And over time, they fell back in love with me, like most people do. And it's still my second home. We go back, like every year, we're gonna go on vacation somewhere else. No, we go to Jamaica. It's a beautiful country, and they treat me like their own. And I feel like I am blessed to call both places home. So yeah, you go through things in life, and it's meant always, I think, to serve, a greater purpose and cause. And so that was one of the highlights of my career, was to be able to do that, was to have this program run for 7 years in Jamaica and help kids, learn to read on their grade level, and kids go off to college and write me and say, I was in your program and it changed my life. And that's what it was all about for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was a treat.